How does it feel to realize that greed is often just high level fear protocol that backfires by making you a prisoner of your own safety? And that the reason you feel so calibrated is that your brain understands that in the final hunt, the one who can spend their energy most precisely is the one who eventually owns the market. If an allocation command is to an obsession as a release value is to a pressurized tank, at what precise point of your release does the pressure become power? Do you believe that your competitive anger is sign of your strength, or do you see that it is high level strategic efficiency error where you are wasting 2026 processing cycles on pushing rivals instead of out innovating them, and that the hunter's law is that you must be the one who keeps the mud off the leaves? What is the most logically terrifying part of allocation command? Is it the weight of the gold or the realization that the people you fought so hard to defeat are now the only ones you are forced to touch for eternity? If you found yourself predicting the exact collapse of sovereign fund by the specific stagnation signatures of its internal bureaucracy because you have mapped the mathematical signature of resource entropy with 99.9% accuracy, would you call it fiscal audit or the final psychological takeover of the system you have reduced to its own inability to move? If the allocation is the constant and the soul is a variable, why are you still solving for the size of the pile instead of absolute speed of the distribution? How do you keep your vibration high when you are being pulled down by the weight of things you no longer need? If the path is made of logic, why are you still acting as though holding on is a form of control when letting go is the only thing that allows for higher order maneuverability? If the specific way the mud bubbles in the sticks reveals a fundamental bottleneck error in the way you have been managing your current 2026 supply chain, do you see a swamp or the final tactical manual for your absolute dominance throughout the strategic mastery of the allocation? If the adaptive intelligence A of a strategic framework is inversely proportional to its degree of internal fixation F and directly proportional to its capacity to integrate contradictory data points C, at what precise point of your 2026 professional scaling does your proven expertise transition from a competitive foundation into a catastrophic barrier error that prevents you from perceiving a paradigm shift until it has already destroyed your market share? Can you calculate the exact increase in your cognitive maneuverability if you stop defending your legacy assumptions and start modeling your intellect as a series of high-utility open gates designed to be breached by superior logic. If you were standing before a burning tomb containing the remains of your most cherished conviction and felt the sudden cold command to walk past it because you calculated that being right is costing you 600 divide percentage in lost collaborative strategy, would you have the logical ruthlessness to leave your certainty in the fire to gain a higher order perspective? How does it feel to realize that belief is often just a high-level encryption layer used to hide our fear of the unknown, and that the reason you feel so calibrated is that your brain understands that in the final hunt, the one who can destroy the wrong map is the one who eventually finds the country. If a barrier command is to an obsession, as a battering ram is to a locked gate, at what precise point of your breakthrough does the wall become the bridge? Do you believe that your skepticism is a sign of your discernment, or do you see that it is high-level strategic filtering error where you are rejecting the divine messenger of new data because it doesn't fit your current 2026 metadata tags? And that the hunter's law is that you must be the one who opens the door. What is the most logically terrifying part of the barrier command? Is it the fire in the tomb or the realization that you have been looking at the future with 99.9% accuracy while being totally blind to the person standing right in front of you? If you found yourself predicting the exact obsolescence of a religious or political dogma by the specific semantic walls it builds against outside inquiry, because you have mapped the cognitive signatures of systemic insularity with total precision. Would you call it a technical study or the final psychological takeover of a culture you have reduced to its own mental prison? If the barrier is a constant and the mind is a variable, why are you still solving for the strength of the defense instead of the absolute efficiency of the penetration? How do you keep your vibration high when you are surrounded by the heat of old arguments? If the path is made of logic, why are you still acting as though consistency is a virtue when evolution requires a total abandonment of your previous states? If the specific way Farinata Tigli Uberti rises from his tomb reveals a fundamental texture error in the way you have been standing your ground in your current 2026 negotiations. Do you see a proud hero or the final tactical manual for your absolute dominance throughout the strategic mastery of the barrier? If the strategic utility of an aggressive maneuver is a function of the total competitive displacement D divided by the internal system friction F and the subsequent reputational decay, at what precise point of your 2026 market offensive does your disruptive force transition from a growth catalyst into catastrophic violence error that triggers a massive automated counter-strike from the regulatory and social ecosystem? Can you calculate the exact increase in your operational longevity if you stop using brute force solutions and start modeling your influence as a series of high utility surgical strikes designed to achieve maximum result with minimum collateral entropy? If you were offered the chance to eliminate your primary rival throughout a move that was perfectly legal but morally radioactive and felt the sudden cold command to abort because you calculated that the boiling blood of public backlash would decrease your talent acquisition rate by 800 divide percentage, would you have the logical ruthlessness to stay your hand to protect the health of your empire? How does it feel to realize that violence is often just a high-level sign of lack of options, and that the reason you feel so calibrated is that your brain understands that in the final hunt, the one who uses the last amount of energy to secure the win is the one who eventually defines the peace? If a violent command is to an obsession as a bow shot is to a target, at what precise point of the trajectory does the arrow become a boomerang? Do you believe that your killer instinct is a sign of your dominance, or do you see that it is high-level strategic resource drain where you are wasting 2026 resource processing cycles on destroying that you should be acquiring, and that the hunter's law is that you must be the one who controls the centaurs? What is the most logically terrifying part of the violence command? Is it the depth of boiling river or the realization that the tyrants you once admired are now just data points drawing in their own history? If you found yourself predicting the exact collapse of a military industrial complex by the specific asymmetry ratios of its kinetic engagements because you have mapped the mathematical signature of overextension with 99.9% accuracy, would you call it a tactical audit or the final psychological takeover of a system you have reduced to its own self-destructive momentum? If the violence is a constant and the predator is a variable, why are you still solving for the heat of the strike instead of the absolute precision of the outcome? How do you keep your vibration high when you are surrounded by the screams of the submerged? If the path is made of logic, why are you still acting as though winning requires a total annihilation of the other when optimal integration is much more sophisticated from higher order power? If the specific way the centaur Nessus points his arrow reveals a fundamental targeting error in the way you have been aiming your current 2026 hostile takeovers, do you see a weapon or the final tactical manual for your absolute dominance throughout the strategic mastery of the violence? If the internal stability S of a psychological system is a function of the alignment between its stated objectives and its subconscious behavior patterns B, at what precise point of your 2026 career path does your perfectionism transition from a high-level quality control filter into a catastrophic self-sabotage error that causes you to dismantle your own success before they can reach maturity? Can you calculate the exact increase in your creative yield if you stop bleeding your energy into fruitless self-criticism and start modeling your output as series of high-utility organic growth cycles where the preservation of self is the primary directive? If you were standing in forest of your own abandoned projects and felt the sudden cold command to listen to the voices in the wood because you calculated that the trauma of your past failures is currently slowing your 2026 processing speed by 400 divided percentage, would you have the logical ruthlessness to comfort your own shadow to regain your mobility? How does it feel to realize that self-hate is often just a high-level form of arrogance that presumes you know better than the system but created you, and that the reason you feel so calibrated is that your brain understands that in the final hunt, the one who is at peace with their own hardware is the one who eventually commands the software of the world. If a self-sabotage command is to an obsession as harpy is to a branch, at what precise point of tearing does the pain become the only data point you trust? Do you believe that your martyrdom is a sign of your dedication, or do you see that it is high-level strategic resource waste where you are intentionally short-circuiting your own 2026 potential to satisfy a legacy script of suffering, and that the hunter's law is that you must be the one who plants the tree? What is the most logically terrifying part of the self-sabotage command? Is it the rain of fire on the sand, or the realization that the trees in the woods are only ones who can never move again. If you found yourself predicting the exact collapse of high-performing team by specific blasphemy ratios of their internal cynicism because you have mapped the cognitive signature of cultural sterility with 99.9% accuracy, would you call it a hard audit or the final psychological takeover of system you have reduced to its own lack of belief? If the self-sabotage is the constant and the soul is the variable, why are you still solving for the intensity of the fire instead of the absolute fertility of the soil? Do you keep your vibration high when you are walking across the desert or your own making? If the past is made of logic, why are you still acting as though suffering is preparation for depth when flourishing is the only thing that creates a sustainable signal?